5.
Thank you. Good evening. This is the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The date is February 23rd, 2021, and it is 6 o'clock. The first item is conflict of interest. Does anybody have a conflict of interest for any of the items on the agenda tonight? Raise your hand. I don't see anybody. Okay, next item is approval of the minutes from January 26th. I need a motion and a second to approve the minutes.
This commission.
We can't hear you. Commissioner Smith, we can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Well, this Commissioner Gordon, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Okay, is there a second?
This is Commissioner Bennett, and I second it.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from January 26th. Can we have a roll call? Are you doing that, David Weir?
Madam Chair, I will. And I'll start with District 1 Rep. Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Muniz?
Yes.
Commissioner Bennett?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Guerrero is absent. Vice Chair Gordon?
Yes.
And Chair Thomas?
Yes.
Okay.
So we've approved the minutes. Next on our agenda is postponements. We don't have any of those. Public participation. Do we have any public participation tonight?
Madam Chair, it does not appear, this is Catherine Harrison Rogers for the record, it does not appear that any of our attendees have their hands held. I'm looking at the list and most of them appear to be those that want to speak or are speaking for some discussion items on today's agenda.
On the agenda? Okay, thank you. Okay, consent agenda, there's nothing on there, and old business, there's nothing on there. So the first item is under new business. Repeal of section 38-59.1 wireless communication facilities. I need a motion and a second to approve this. Move to approve.
This is Commissioner Gordon. I'll make a motion that we approve item 1 under new business.
Thank you. Is there a second?
This is Commissioner Bennett, and I'll second it.
Thank you. So is there a presentation, Catherine?
Yes, ma'am. Again, this is Catherine Harrison Rogers with Community Development for the record. This is a repeal of section 38-59.1, which is wireless communication facilities. I'll give you a little background about how it came to be and what the issues are and why staff's requesting this repeal. Back in 2018, Ordinance 2872 incorporated wireless communication facilities into the zoning code. It's a subsection of the standard cell and communication tower section of the zoning code. It generally outlines the permitting and licensing process for these small cell on city rights of way and properties. So for example, these are these really small cells that they attach to light poles or other tall structures that maybe are within the city rights of way. The reason for this was to be compliant with federal regulations. However, interesting thing to note is this particular section of code is exempt from zoning.
How do you do business?
It's one of the issues we have.
So you can.
So again, some of the issues that we found is that it is exempt from the zoning regulations. So we feel as though it's not best place in the zoning ordinance since it's completely exempt from that chapter. Additionally, there is some conflicting language in this subsection. For example, some of the definitions differ in this subsection from the main section having to do with wireless communication structures. Again, it's just primarily a permitting and licensing process and could be best served in the General Municipal Code, which is Volume 1. Therefore, staff, after consultation with the legal department, determined that it really is more appropriate to move this section to a different location than municipal code, most likely a consolidated section related to telecommunications. And so ultimately what we're doing is under 38-10, the Planning and Zoning Commission is required to make recommendations about any amendments to the zoning code. So since this lives in the zoning code, we're asking for your recommendation to City Council so that when we move forward to City Council, it can be taken out of the zoning code and then moved to a more appropriate location in the municipal code. The rest of section 3859 will not be affected because truly that has much more to do with the zoning code itself, setbacks, general zones and where things should be located, things of that nature. And so with that, staff is recommending approval. We have several findings. One, again, is that particular section is exempt from the zoning code and is only subject to review by building permits, and it's administrative. The repeal of the section also eliminates conflicting city regulations, improves small cell tower installation, and promotes local economic development infrastructure. Again, the remainder of section 3859 will remain in the zoning code and will be untouched. And then also, as I specified before, the Planning and Zoning Commission does have to recommend approval, denial, or modification to all requests for code amendments per section 3810 of the zoning code. And with that, your options are to vote yes with conditions, vote no, or vote to table. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about this. And we also have Rob Cabello with our legal department here as well, in case any questions from his perspective do come up.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions? If you raise your hand here on the participants list, I can call on you. Let's see, Harvey. Commissioner Gordon, you have a question?
Yeah, it's Commissioner Gordon. Catherine, does this mean that any requests for towers, communication towers, are not going to come before the Planning and Zoning Commission anymore?
Very good question, Commissioner Gordon, members of the commission. The answer to that is no. As I had stated before, the remainder of 3859 will remain in the zoning code at this time. The only section that we're requesting to be removed is the small cell tower section. Those are those very small units that are placed upon light poles within city rights-of-way or can be placed on city buildings or other city infrastructure. They're really small. It's not a cell tower as you might understand it. It's really just an electronic component that's added to existing infrastructure. Those are allowed by federal law and are exempt from zoning review. So these are not the same as those large cell towers you may be thinking of. Hopefully that does answer the question.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Nichols?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and members of the commission. For the record, Larry Nichols, Community Development. What Catherine just referenced was the small cell towers. They'll still be reviewed. They'll be reviewed through the building department permitting process. And we work with Public Works on that as well. So it won't be a situation of them not being looked at or addressed. It'll be primarily with the removal of this section. It'll be primarily with the building safety department, one-stop shop, if you will. And this is something that we've had a number of inquiries, and we've issued a few permits as the small cell tower companies begin to filter into Las Cruces. As Catherine mentioned, it is a federal regulation to allow them. And we anticipate there will be a number more. They primarily, the purpose of them are to take care of some of the dead zones that we have with communication and with the internet. But that's how we'll address them. I just want the commission to know that they will be reviewed and under the permitting process.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Anyone else? Okay, I guess we'll call for the vote then.
Okay, Madam Chair. Commissioner Sanchez,
I vote yes based on staff findings.
Commissioner Muniz,
Yes, based on staff's findings.
Commissioner Bennett,
I vote yes based on staff findings as well.
Commissioner Smith,
I vote yes based on analysis and staff findings.
Commissioner Guerrero is absent. Vice Chair Gordon,
But also based on staff's finding, I vote yes.
and Chair Thomas.
Yes, I vote yes, based on staff findings and explanation of why it's being moved. So that passes 6-0. So next is, we have 2 discussion items. The first one is the West Mesa Industrial Park Master Plan and overlay regulations and zoning map. So do we need a motion for this?
Madam Chair, again, Catherine Harrison Rogers for the record. No, ma'am, you do not need a motion for this. This is simply a discussion item. It's for information purposes.
And it's not quasi judicial, so we don't have to.
No, ma'am.
Okay, thanks. All right, so there's a presentation, I guess.
There is. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our Economic Development Department. And we have several members here, and they will provide an introduction to this. And then ultimately, the consultant with Decker Parish will provide a presentation. I'm going to go ahead, and I have to promote a few people to panelists so that they're able to speak and to present. Let me do that right now. Bear with me. So first is going to be Celicia Villegas. She is with Economic Development. And then I will promote the other folks that are our attendees to panelists so that they can share their information. Lisa, you should be able to speak.
Okay. Good evening, all. My name is Celicia Villegas. I'm with Economic Development. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today, and it's nice to meet you all. So, why is economic development here at P&Z? I think I'm asking myself that question. The industrial park, which now, by the way, has a brand new name, Las Cruces Innovation and Industrial Park, is tied to the Economic Development Strategic Plan. And it's been identified as a very important but underutilized economic development asset for Las Cruces. Because of this, Economic Development pursued an EDA grant to complete a feasibility and economic planning study for the city to leverage on the park and airport to support job creation, public-private partnerships, and private investment. So the need to update the master plan and amend the overlay regulations were evident to be able to implement recommendations from this study, as well as to modernize and improve competitiveness. As you all know, Elevate Las Cruces prioritized this in their policy CE 2.5 to support additional industry and business growth in the park. And the first action is to update the master plan development strategy and overlay to develop strategies to stimulate business development in the area. I was recently named the point person for the industrial park. And we also, I believe, have Francisco Payares, Andy Hume, and Griselda Martinez as part of our team to help with any questions you may have. Our consulting firm, Decker Parish and Sabatini, is preparing this master plan and regulations, which is in draft form currently, and will be presenting for us today. We all look forward and welcome your guidance, input, and recommendations. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce Will Gleason, Principal of DPS, and I'll let him introduce his team. Thank you.
Thank you, Celicia. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. And I am not Katrina Arndt. I know that name is up on my screen and down in the lower right, that is not Will Gleason, but somehow we have managed to swap identities for this meeting. But again, I am Will Gleason. I'm a partner with Deca Sabatini. And with us tonight is Katrina Arndt, who has been managing this project, and Dan Guimond from Economic and Planning Systems, who conducted the market analysis and has been contributing throughout the project. So we have two parts to our presentation tonight. One is to give you an overview of the update on the master plan. And then the second part is to give you a preview of the regulatory framework that we will be bringing back to you for adoption as a part of the land use code. So as Alicia said, this is a really critical piece for the city's economic strategic development. And we work across the state and across the Southwest, and we see an increasing demand, as you probably know, for industrial space. And this is a real asset that the city has. So we were tasked, and we've been working for a better part of last year on updating the master plan, which really hadn't been updated for over 20 years, and really kind of needed a refresh. So our plan here is partly to update the master plan and the regulatory framework, and to give a fresh vision for this area, which is almost 2,000 acres, about 1,820 acres, and to connect it more to the airport, to really leverage the proximity of the airport, and just make it so that you can use this asset and really generate new jobs, new economic activity in the city. So our agenda tonight, and it's not a long presentation, it's only about 20 slides, so we will not keep you here late into the night, is to really just to show you what's in the plan, talk about the goals, talk a little bit about the framework and our next steps. So I already introduced our team, and I think some of you probably know Deca Sabatini. We have an office in Las Cruces, and we work across the Southwest. And I think one of the values we bring is that we really do a lot of development related work, and so we understand the metrics that will actually result in new development versus just some great pictures. And Dan really brings this market sensibility and his really national perspective on what it is that industrial users are looking when they are seeking a new site. So that was our scope, was to conduct this market and real estate analysis, really building off of the Market Street report, integrate the Las Cruces Airport and what value that brings, update the land use framework, identify development strategies, and really build upon the park's success that it has had with some new opportunities. So the goals are to, help the park compete better for new development. It now can captures on an average about 40% of the demand for industrial space in the metropolitan area of Doñana County and in the Borderplex area. But frankly, it loses a lot of potential tenants to other locations. So we think that you can improve the visibility, the image of the park, that integration with the airport. And I think there's some real opportunities to promote some new kind of environmental and energy efficiency in terms of distinguishing the park from other industrial parks in terms of what it brings in terms of reliability of energy and sustainability. And then really leverage the economic development partnerships that you already have with the city, with the county, and with the Borderplex and other organizations in the area. So I'm going to turn over to Dan, who's going to talk about the market and real estate analysis.
Thanks, Will. Again, I'm Dan Guimond with Economic and Planning Systems. And, we're a subconsultant to DPS on this project. We also worked on Elevate Las Cruces. So we've been working in Las Cruces for a little while. As Will mentioned, this project really evolved out of a earlier study, 2019 study that Market Street conducted, an economic analysis of the city and the industrial park, and some specific recommendations on target industries that should be pursued. And we essentially picked it up from there in terms of looking more specifically at the real estate development opportunities associated with those target industries and how that would translate into an updated master plan. We did some analysis on industrial demand in the county and in the Mavita region. Our estimates are approximately an average of about a little over 100,000 square feet of industrial space is the potential, the approximate potential for the industrial park, which is about 40% of the county or regional total. This demand would translate to approximately 200 acres of industrial development over the next 20 years. So as the park has 1,820 acres and only some small percentage of that is developed at this point in time, there's adequate land to accommodate the future industrial demand in the region. So, I mean, it's a strong asset from that perspective and something that can accommodate a wide range of uses. The Market Street report, which was called the Economic Assessment and Target Sector Opportunity Study, identified 3 high priority target industries for the park, those being aviation, aerospace, and defense, and that's primarily UAS drone type vehicles being the niche within that larger sector, which of course is quite strong in the county and in the larger region, including White Sands and the spaceport. Second being value-added agriculture, basically looking at opportunities for value-added manufacturing that starts with the agricultural base of the county, the dairy Saputo that's already out there at the park, this concentration of chili and pecans in the area, and the growing opportunity for hemp-related industries are all things that were identified in the study. And then thirdly, advanced manufacturing or higher value manufacturing uses. So next slide. One thing that we did want to note that those are the best sort of target opportunities. They're a little bit aspirational in the sense that they're not well established at this point. They're things that are being recommended to be pursued, but from our perspective, it's still important to pursue multiple industry sectors in order to achieve the economic development goals of the city. They're incorporated in Elevate Las Cruces, as well as into the goals, the economic development goals for the industrial park itself. So one of our recommendations was that the industrial park be configured into separate districts with lot sizes and utilities that are targeted to support those 3 targeted industries, as well as other types of industrial development that we think will continue to be opportunities for the park, and that includes warehouse and distribution, more general manufacturing, and other logistics type uses that are also growing industrial sectors in the region. One of the major strategies that we've tried to incorporate in the plan, in the master plan, in addition to the regulatory modifications that Katrina's going to go into in a moment, is also more of a proactive implementation plan, and that includes a recommendation for a proactive sales and marketing program, includes recommendation for a full-time property manager, includes a streamlined sales and transactional process that currently is really quite convoluted and quite slow. And it also includes doing some more specific, essentially raising the visibility of the park, getting it to have its own website. Right now, if you get on Google and type in West Mesa Industrial Park, you don't even get the park. It gives you some other location in Las Cruces. There's just no identity out there in the marketplace for the park currently. So we think it needs a dedicated website. It needs specific brochures, marketing brochures for the targeted industries that we're suggesting that have been identified, as well as a branding and wayfinding program for the park itself. So next slide. So I think it's back.
Thanks, Dan.
Back to you.
We really built upon Dan's recommendations, and you're seeing here the cover of the report. And now that we have a new name for the park, we might need to revisit the name that we have in the report. So we will talk to Celicia about that. And I do think the new name is an improvement upon West Mesa. So this report was developed over the last 6 months, and I do want to say that this was all done during the pandemic, but we did an online outreach to the existing park tenants at the beginning of the project. We met with Andy Hume, we toured the park, and we did set up a website to provide information. And we conducted a survey in terms of what people liked about the park and what services they felt could be improved upon. So that, all by way of saying, that informed this master plan that we have created. And we're not going to go through the whole master plan here. I just want to give you a couple highlights before turning it over to Katrina to talk about the regulatory framework. So we think that, what Dan was talking about, when you look at this now, this is our new kind of land use recommendations for the park. And this is not to say that thou shalt build industrial in the purple and thou shalt do value added agriculture in the green areas, but rather to suggest and to recommend that if there's a value-added agricultural activity, that it locates in that southern part of the park. And if there's an activity like UAVs that can leverage the airport, that it locates in that kind of mustard color on the north side of I-10. So and then if it's a commercial enterprise, it locates in those red areas near the interchange itself. So it's a way of organizing this, giving a little more identity and a little more just kind of sophistication in terms of what land uses are intended to go where. And then we built upon this and created kind of a future build out to indicate what it could look like. And we think that this can be used for marketing purposes. And also to kind of test fit what certain uses might be, where they might be most appropriate in terms of parcel sizes and available infrastructure. So this is all done in SketchUp. So it's something that we can give to the city and that they can use as a tool going forward. And then these are our recommendations. So you'll see this at the end of the report. Very specific recommendations about for implementation in terms of investment in new extensions of roads, utilities, management, branding, development process, with a time frame and a cost range and potential funding sources. And we also have a longer term matrix along at the bottom as well. So some of these are very straightforward. And really, if I recommend, if the city does nothing else, get rid of the ordinance that requires every sale over, I think it is $50,000 to get approval by city council. And from our research, that is not something that is needed, that is legally required. And I know that Celicia will really help streamline that process. And we think that just some sort of operational changes can really help make the park more competitive. And then some small investments, as well as we also put in here some larger investments that the city could consider constructing a spec building for incubator-like companies to attract new investment in the park and to attract new companies to the park. But that is a major lift. So we're not saying you have to do that, but we provide some information about that in the report. So, so that's kind of the last part. And then really the part that we will come back to you for is the regulatory framework, which Katrina will take over now.
Yeah, thanks, Will. So the regulatory framework really is anticipated to replace the overlay zone, the West Mesa Industrial Park overlay zone standards, and then be adopted as ordinance. And we did, because as Will was alluding to earlier, the creation of this plan was in 1996, so it's kind of old. So we basically updated most everything within this regulatory framework that was associated with the overlay zone standards. And as Will was alluding to, we generated this different land use framework in order to create these nodes of activity and try to have similar uses, create the synergy in the same areas. And then with this new land use framework, we have associated land uses that are permitted by district. And so we updated the the use categories. We made them a lot broader. The initial framework just had a list of uses that were permitted and a list of uses that were prohibited. And we kind of differentiated a little bit by area in order to promote this synergy of uses, basically. In the commercial district, for example, that we created along the, and I'm going to flip back really quickly, which is basically located along the inter-exchange so that they can take advantage of through traffic. But this is really meant to support the local workforce. We've had a lot of interviews with stakeholders that either work in the park or are somehow associated with it. And we were trying to find out what the biggest challenges are. And one of them was that there's no services out there. And as you know, the park is kind of a bit of a drive away from Las Cruces. So the desire was really there to promote more commercial uses or more services that could provide amenities to the local workforce. And so in the red areas, we permitting commercial uses which weren't permitted before, only as accessory uses. And then in all other areas, we are permitting commercial uses as accessory uses up to 40%. And that's the initial number, I think, was 25%, so that if there is a use that wants to provide a cafeteria or a little restaurant, they can do that. And then we have the manufacturing district that kind of captures more of the manufacturing, and then aviation related, as Will was alluding to, is supposed to be promoted to be in conjunction with the airport, and then the value-added agriculture at the fringe of the park, basically. And so our use categories, we try to broaden them up so that in the future, if there's a new use coming along, you can just plug it in rather than having to amend this and adding it to the list of uses. And so, for example, light manufacturing captures everything that happens within a building. And so we are looking at the uses not so much at like what each specific use does, but what the impact is on the environment. So anything that basically you can do within a building that doesn't spill outside is captured under light manufacturing. And then heavy manufacturing, for example, is stuff that spills out of the building a little bit. And so that one gets conditional use standards that are here in that far right column. And each of these uses that have an X basically have conditional use standards associated with them. And for heavy manufacturing, it regulates screening, for example. Yes, so that's the use table that we updated. And then we went into the development standards, and there was a lot of outdated architectural standards that really weren't fitting for an industrial park. There were Pueblo architectural styles required for facades as one of the architectural standards, and that does not really work with a industrial building. And so we updated them to make them more practical to the uses that are actually anticipated there. We also created more fine-tuned landscape standards that kind of, as Will was alluding to, go in the direction of sustainability measures, so stormwater harvesting, low-impact development features. We also reduced the parking requirement, that there basically is no parking requirements. So if a use goes in, because there is a lot of land, they can decide how much parking they think their workforce and or patrons will need. But what we put in there is some requirements on electric charging stations, and then also on pervious surfaces in order to reduce the amount of pavement that is within the park. And so, yeah, you all have a copy of both these pieces, part one, the master plan framework, and part two, the regulatory framework. And we hope you had a chance to look at it. If our next steps are going to collect all the comments and all the feedback we will get, and then revise both the master plan and regulatory framework and create a final master plan, and then hopefully go through the adoption process with this document. And I think, Will, if you have anything to add, this is our last slide.
Yeah. So I think we just stand for questions, and we are anticipating having a public meeting in the next month. So that will be one final kind of push for more input from the public. It's not something that generates a ton of interest, but we are doing our best to advertise and promote that. So are there any questions?
Thank you very much for that presentation. Any questions or comments? Raise your hand. Not seeing any hands raised. Okay. I have some comments and questions. Okay. So I really liked what you did here, and it looks like, you know, you're trying to make it into a place where people want to be, and where there's, you know, that's pedestrian safety and trails and, you know, all kinds of things like that that I thought were really nice to see. What else did I like? You know, certainly the marketing, we've just not had any marketing out there, and the website, all those things really need to be done. And I like the fact that you were going to do a plaza and shade structures. Those are things you recommended. And connecting to the airport, I think, is really important as well. My concerns are, and this doesn't really have anything to do with you, it's just that and it's not that I don't want to see this park grow and actually provide more jobs and more economic development. It's just that it's way out there on the west side of town, and so I hope the Economic Development Department is also looking at some other areas in the city for jobs, more things on the east side. It does cause a lot of driving when so many people live on the east side and then they're driving way out to the west side. So that's a concern of mine. My other concern is, and you brought this up too, and it's because I'm on the Workforce Connection Board, but the biggest area of concern is the availability of a skilled workforce. And, you know, you saw that right away, and we're very aware of that. We're trying to work on it. I'm just saying to Economic Development Department, this is a great plan, and maybe the Economic Development Department would like to come and share that with the Workforce Connection Board. So you can say to them, and these are the kinds of skills we're going to need. These are the markets we're targeting. And so we would like to see programs for training workers for these kinds of jobs, so we can kind of get all on the same direction, which is something we've been trying to do for a while. And it is a state level priority. And then the only other thing is there's this thing called the Santa Teresa Border Area Transportation Plan that was done a few years ago. And one of the things they talk about is the fact that in Texas and Arizona and California, they took whatever their border crossing was, like our Santa Teresa, and they used it to develop a whole state economic development plan that built on that and went through their state and into Canada. They're called the Canamex corridors. And Texas and Arizona and California have all done that, and New Mexico has not. And so I don't know if it's possible for you to add some of this in here, but this plan is about to be updated by the El Paso MPO. They're supposed to have a group that meets regularly and talks about this whole regional economic development. So I would just like, as part of planning for our own industrial park, that we make sure that we're participating in this broader regional economic development, because, you know, that's how Tucson and Phoenix are growing off of their border crossings, and California off of theirs, and we are not doing that in this state, and it needs to be state level work. But I can send you more information if you want, but just some suggestion that part of this planning also get folded into some of this regional and actually statewide economic development that's, you know, just beginning. So
that's a very important comment, Chairwoman. We did, one thing I neglected to mention is we did in the implementation section talk about just doing a better job of working with the economic development partnerships that are already in place, including Mavita and Borderplex and the state as a whole. And I think we can add some of that language regarding the Canamex corridors that you outlined, and we'll do that. We'll add that to one of the recommendations.
And it's the New Mexico Department of Transportation that's supposed to be orchestrating that in this part of the world, and they're supposed to set up this protocol group that works together. So that's it's not much has happened, but like I said, El Paso MPO is updating it, and we're watching that, and so is all the people in Santa Teresa are very involved in what's going on there. So.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do think like the fact that the park is really one shift away from the West Coast is really a good advantage that the park has. And that combined with the fact that, this plan will be in place for some time. And I expect that there'll be a lot more self-driving traffic along I-10 and everywhere in the next 10 years. And that the park is in a good position to take advantage of that. And that's part of the reasons why we are not recommending any parking requirements for the park, because parking requirements are probably going to change dramatically in the next decade.
Well, yes, and I noticed that you asked for electric vehicles in hookups, and people have been talking to me lately about the electrification of buildings. There was just a thing on NPR tonight about what's happening with that. Some cities are passing legislation that all new buildings have to be electrification ready, and then there are some state things going on where they're passing legislation that says you can't force people to do this electrification of buildings.
Yeah.
But some of the developers are actually doing it because it's much cheaper to build the buildings like that, and just have the heat pump in the wall and not have to do all the other stuff with gas. So I don't know if that's anything to mention under the utilities, but I think it's something the city needs to be watching and be aware of.
I agree.
Because if electrification ready buildings are the way to go, we want to make sure we're on that bandwagon too. Okay, anybody else? Commissioner Gordon.
I have two things I'd like to say. First one is a technical question, which may require our city councilor to answer. I don't know whether or not, is the city restricted in any way in offering someone to come here to take space in the park where we can do a lease and sale back? And that way, the money that would be required to buy an extensive portion of land could be used for building and other resources that they may need. And at some time in the future, if hopefully they are successful, then they can just go ahead and whatever arrangements they made with the city to just buy the land that they sit on. Is that someone can answer that question, or are they prohibited? Is the city prohibited from doing that?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Gordon, I don't have an answer to that, but maybe Griselda does.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Griselda.
Good evening, PNC committee. Thank you for that question, Member Garten. What we're doing right now is we're actually evaluating what type of incentives we can more aggressively provide for recruitment and actually expansion of local companies. So what we're doing is we depending on the types of jobs, average wages, if they are within the targeted industries that we want to have clusters around, we can evaluate options. So one of the main reasons why we have a designated point of contact is to channel all those potential interested parties to inquire more information, and then we definitely evaluate options. We have a number of different tools. One important element to remember is the anti-donation clause at the state, and that's a restriction in a lot of the different things that other states do. New Mexico is the only one with this anti-donation clause. So some of the incentives other states can do, we cannot, to benefit a private entity with public funding, even if it's in exchange of jobs or other economic development efforts. But we are definitely planning a very aggressive recruitment effort and also expanding on the current business retention and expansion opportunities to not only attract companies from outside the region, but also grow the ones that we have within the city. Madam Chair.
I can understand what you're saying, but my thought is, like, for example, you said that there's certain things that the city cannot do. Like, for example, I don't believe that they can do tax abatement, say real estate taxes, let somebody come in here for 10 years and not pay any real estate taxes. I think the city is prohibited from doing that. But this is just a thought I had. It's just a way to give an incentive to somebody to come here where they have to buy 300-400 acres to build a plant or something. That's a lot of money that they would have to put out that they could use for something else. And if it's a viable option, it's something that maybe perhaps somebody should consider. And my other thought is, I remember when the Planning and Zoning Commission worked very hard along with other departments on developing the Elevate Las Cruces comprehensive plan, that I made a remark that I thought that the key to Elevate Las Cruces is economic development. I think without it, the city is just going to remain, will just grow very slowly or perhaps even stagnate. We need something like the park to bring in really good business. Perhaps if we can get an anchor like a mall has, like a big department store, if we get on one end of the mall, that entices other companies or other stores to come in. Hopefully that we might be able to entice somebody to come here, and if we could really spur something like that, it would just take off, I think, because the site is very, very nice. It's very easy to access, and we have 10, we have the airport, we have possible rail lines, we're close to the border, we're not far from a lot of economic areas, and I think that would be, if we could do this, it would be an unbelievable, tremendous success for the city.
Totally agree.
Hey, thank you. Robert Cabello, you wanted to add something?
Oh, yes. So there are industrial revenue bonds that kind of function in the way that Commissioner Gordon was, indicating. And there's also, of course, LIDA, which is slightly different. There are tools that we can use. Again, they have to be restricted to very specific things about what they're actually funding. It can be done.
Okay. Anyone else? I wanted to also add, because everybody here knows I'm the transit person, so I was happy to see that there was some planning for that on the, I didn't see anything about the transit. And one map I saw transit facilities, but then I didn't see anything about how that was actually going to happen. And you also mentioned the Department of Transportation work with one of the agencies. I can't remember the name of it. Do you remember, Griselda, who it is, which car rental place it is?
Enterprise.
Enterprise, yes, thank you. Yeah, so I talked to Jennifer this morning. They still are doing that program. And so, it's still possible to work with them to set up a transportation for people from Las Cruces out to the industrial part. So. Any more comments? Okay, well, we thank everybody for the presentation, and if even half of it materializes, it's going to be a great place out there. So we look forward to some of that.
Very good.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You commissioners.
Thank you,
We'll be
Madam
back
Chair
soon.
and members of the committee. Have a great evening.
Thank you. You too. Okay, then the next item is some training. Catherine, are you leading that, or Susanna? Not sure who it is.
Chairperson Thomas, this is Commissioner Sanchez, if I can just interject briefly.
Yes.
I'm just curious, so unfortunately, just to notify everyone, this is going to be my last meeting as part of the Planning and Zoning Commission. There will be a new commissioner for District 1 in the next meeting. And so for that reason, though, I'm curious if it's okay if I just sign off for this portion, because I don't know that it's necessary for me to stay in the meeting beyond this point. I will definitely encourage the person who will be replacing me to rewatch the stream of this, because this seems like it will be very important for that person.
So thank you. I did have on my list here that this was your last meeting, so I want to thank you for the all that you've done for us. We really like to have your voice and your good comments. I think it's probably okay if you leave, as you pointed out. This is probably not going to apply to you, this next part. So we wish you fame and fortune in your next endeavors.
Thank you for that, Chairperson. And I would like to just briefly thank everyone, of course, who serves on this board, and then also the deepest gratitude for city staff and all of the hard work that you've always done. Thank you so much for always positioning this board well to do good things for the city of Las Cruces. So thank you all so much. I look forward to seeing you and engaging with you in other ways in the community. But yeah, thank you so much.
Hey, don't leave. I think Commissioner Muniz wants to say something.
Abraham, you will be missed. And I wish whatever you're going to do, I wish you all the luck in the world. And your comments, decisions this commission has made have always been very intelligent and creative. So we will miss you. Hope to see you around town. When this pandemic over, we'll have a beer at one of those breweries. Okay.
Okay, Catherine, I think we'll turn it over to you or whoever's going to do the training next.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Srijana Basnet, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department. Let me know if you can see my screen. I'm sorry, give me a minute. Okay, I'm having more technical difficulties than I would like to admit right now.
Okay, now we see your screen.
Yeah. It's fine. Mark is going to share the screen for us today. So with that, let's get going. This is the third time that we try to have this training, and we were this close to not having it again. No. So we're going to cover some broad basic topics today regarding planning, but we're also going to hone in on some of the planning related legal topics that you all as planning and zoning commissioners sometimes have to deal with. So I'm going to be tag teaming with the rest of staff today, and they're going to introduce themselves as and when, you know, their presentation slides come up. It's a lot of ground to cover, but we will at the end all be available for questions, and we can go back to particular slides if you need us to. So with that, the City of Las Cruces receives its land use planning authority from the state of New Mexico. And the state also enables the city to establish a planning commission. The city has zoning authority as part of its state delegated police power, specifically for the purpose of promoting the health, safety, morals, and general welfare within its jurisdiction, and within a 5-mile extraterritorial jurisdiction in the case of subdivisions. Next slide, please. As you're aware, the City Council establishes and appoints members to the Planning and Zoning Commission and delegates to them the power to make land development decisions on some planning matters, such as subdivisions, and make recommendations to the City Council on some other matters like zoning and amending the comprehensive plan. Next slide, please. Most cases that are brought before the commission involve a certain level of staff review or technical review, but as P&Z members, you are also expected to have basic knowledge of the plans and regulations that influence your decision making. So I'm going to run through a list of plans the City Council has adopted or endorsed through the years to give you a general idea of what is already available for you to use. And most of you are aware of these, but since it's just going to be a standard training, going from broad to specific, we have regional plans like One Valley, One Vision 2040, Mobility 2040, which is the MPO plan. These provide guidance on issues that could have regional impacts. They talk about things that can traverse jurisdictional boundaries, like the environment or movement of people and goods. And then we have plans that are applicable citywide and provide more technical guidance on more narrow topics like city parks or urban agriculture. Next slide, please. So this is kind of the framework of Elevate Las Cruces, which is the city's comprehensive plan. Most of you were, on the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee, so you're aware of this, but some of you might not be. So I'm just going to run through this real quick. Our city's comprehensive plan, which is our umbrella plan, really guides the vision for the community, what we want to be when we grow up as a city in the next 20-25 years. So it has a vision framework. It talks about these goals that we aspire to as a community. Then there's a physical framework within Elevate Las Cruces, and that is the future development program. There is a future development map. There is a future thoroughfare map. And what this does is it provides you with guidance on where the city wants to see growth and how we want to kind of see that growth happen. The policy framework are these sets of goals and policies and action items. And that provides a lot of guidance to both staff, organizationally, operationally, as well as to you all when you're making decisions on whether a certain request or a case has merit and is in alignment with the comprehensive plan. Then we have more technical or specific plans, policy plans, and some of those were, I mentioned earlier, the Parks and Rec Master Plan, the Active Transportation Plan would be one. And then we have all of these tools, the municipal budget, the municipal code, which is, it includes the land development code, the subdivision code. Then we also have the city's strategic plans, the department strategic plans, and then we also have the capital improvement plan, which is part of the city's budget. And these will help city council and staff and the community itself to really implement the ideas in the comprehensive plan and these other plans. Next slide, please. So this is just a brief, like a couple of points talking about, how the comprehensive plan was adopted. It's been a year now since it was officially adopted by the City Council. Of course, it's been a unique year, but we did have the baseline report. That's the first part of the annual progress report for Elevate that was presented to you a couple of months ago. And so work is ongoing on this, and it's really meant to be used to guide comprehensively things that happen in the city in terms of growth and development. Next slide, please. Okay, and so another one of these plans that will be more pertinent to you in your work as planning and zoning commissioners is the active transportation plan. This is a plan that was created to focus or kind of highlight the needs of pedestrians and cyclists in the community, people who rely on other modes of transportation, who may not be able to have a vehicle or afford one or desire to have multiple vehicles in their houses. So they want an alternative way to get around town. And of course, walking and biking are excellent for the environment and just in terms of sustainability and resiliency. So we want to encourage that as a city. This plan has policy recommendations. It also has a bikeway network that is proposed. So when you see subdivisions coming before you, master plans, these will have proposed networks and proposed cross sections and things like that. And this is where you can kind of look back for a little bit of guidance. What does our active transportation plan advise us? Next slide. And I'm not going to read through these, but here's a whole list of area plans and blueprints that we have. Community planning blueprints are kind of quick and dirty plans that city staff has been. Well, actually, we have a few consultants that have helped us do a bit more involved blueprint as well. But these are plans that are specific to certain areas of town. They focus on the needs of a specific neighborhood or corridor. And so they're unique in their own way. The Infield policy plan is an area plan as well. It's larger in area to almost every other plan on this list, but nonetheless, they have specific set of recommendations and policies that staff then applies and helps you in your decision making when you're reviewing the staff reports and cases that come before you. Next slide. So this is just generally speaking the planning process. If you ever wondered, how do we plan? How do these plans get on the books? It's just step by step, kind of analyzing, data collecting, and it is kind of cyclical because you don't really stop evaluating. Even when the plan is adopted, you do want to make sure that you're measuring and monitoring and tracking success. Maybe some policies worked and were applied correctly. Maybe some didn't. And so then you have your amendment process where you reevaluate plans and you will see some plans come before you and policies come before you that apply to land development. Next slide. All right, with that, I'm going to hand over to Catherine. She's welcome to share her screen at this time.
Good evening, everyone. Again, Catherine Harrison Rogers with the Community Development Department. Is everybody able to see the screen?
Yes.
Very good.
Yes.
Alrighty, so I am going to go ahead and talk generally about the development process with the city And ultimately, how we get from raw land outside the city into the city and ultimately to building permit, and then theoretically, in some cases, a business registration. So, as you all know, raw land is taken into the city through an annexation process. You all are part of that process. It involves a legal document, a plat showing what those property boundaries are. It goes through a review process with both Doña County as well as the city of Las Cruces, and typically involves master plan and zoning. Now, master plans and zoning can also encompass a PUD. It consists of both. Then from there, of course, it moves on to final site plans or subdivisions, then construction drawings as technical documents, and ultimately building permits. I'm going to talk about a few of these in a little bit more detail, those that really impact you and that you all are a part of in terms of being able to review and influence the way the city grows. So first, I'd like to speak about master plans. Ultimately, these are conceptual plans that really dictate the location of uses, the layout of roads, and conceptually how the infrastructure might work. Again, there's some phasing that's involved with that, and they are only required for certain types of projects. Those projects that have multiple phases, those projects that have multiple uses, again, if it's part of an annexation, and whether or not it's larger than 40 lots. And also, we utilize those master plans when we have commercial office or industrial development that wants to use what we call the alternate summary process. Now, this commission does not review alternate summary subdivisions. Those are subdivisions whereby applicants are able to break off one lot at a time in order to facilitate development. However, in order to be planful about it, we do have to have a master plan showing how that might work prior to them getting broken off. Again,
Catherine, before you get off the screen, I'd just like to ask you a question.
Yes.
What is the definition of the size of a lot?
I'm sorry, excuse me, in reference to what, sir?
Well, you said that required for 40 or more lots. Is that an acre, a quarter of an acre, a half an acre? What is a lot?
Sure. A lot is any developable parcel that can be that meets the general requirements and standards outlined in the zoning code. So it depends on what zone it's in. So let's say, for example, REM, residential estate mobile. The parcel size must be an acre. It has to meet several other provisions in terms of lot width and depth. However, when you get down to some other types of parcels in the city, they can be much smaller. So for example, R1A, a 5,000 square foot lot. So it's really variable. And then to complicate things even more, Commissioner Gordon, those lots can also be even smaller if variance requests are approved or if it's part of an infill project that's approved by the board.
Okay, thanks.
Absolutely. So master plans are also utilized when we're doing initial zoning, and they can be processed concurrently with other zone changes for properties that may be changing from one type of zone to another. They don't have to be standalone. Interestingly enough, the master plan, in terms of who reviews that versus the zoning, the Planning and Zoning Commission is the final authority on master plans, whereas the City Council is the final authority on zone changes. So interestingly enough, although you can process them simultaneously, the final authority is different depending upon which one. Generally with master plans, there are few to no deviations from the standards. If you get into a situation where somebody is asking for multiple deviations, that type of project has to go through a planned unit development. Planned unit developments are required when there are 3 or more deviations the codes. So those are typically, let's say somebody wanted to deviate from the front setbacks, and they also wanted to deviate from the height, and they also wanted to deviate from certain engineering standards. Those would ultimately be processed as a plan unit development, and that, while it goes through this board and commission as a recommendation to City Council, it's ultimately approved at City Council. So master plans, again, not PUDs, but master plans are approved by P&Z. They are not approved at City Council unless it's part of an annexation. So some examples of master planned areas in town is Sonoma Ranch. It, of course, has several master plans tied to it. There's Sonoma Ranch East, Sonoma Ranch North, but it was a large area that was master planned. It was approved by this board, and then ultimately had subsequent subdivisions and phases throughout its life to end up separating out those lots for further development. Now I'm going to talk more about planned unit developments. I touched on that a little bit. You can see here's an example of the one in Metro Verde. It's a little bit different, but similar. Again, this is a type of zoning district that is master planned. It is a master plan itself. While it does have zones incorporated in it, it's not a standalone zoning district. Planned unit development is its own zoning district. It does include a conceptual plan, very similar to the master plan we just talked about. However, planned unit development provides a lot more flexibility and creativity in order to do things that wouldn't normally be allowed by code. While we allow this creativity and flexibility, they have to actually provide some benefits to the community as sort of a trade to be able to do those things. So some of those benefits could include components of affordable housing. They could include going beyond the normal development standards and creating additional parks or open space. They could provide maybe more of a regional drainage system as opposed to a system that's specific just for their development, things of that nature. Again, this type of process is required for multi-phase developments, again, with 3 or more deviations from the code. As I had touched base upon before, master plans don't have those types of deviations. Again, those public benefits do have to be included, and that's for each planning related deviation. So if they were deviating from the height and the setbacks and parking requirements, they would have to provide some sort of public benefit for each one of those. Again, engineering deviations are also allowed and need to be approved by Public Works and incorporated into that plan. These concept plans related to PUDs do act as master plans, very similar to what we reviewed before. They specify uses, densities, infrastructure, as well as any other types of land uses related to the project. Again, they can create their own standards and codes. They could create entirely new design standards and zoning codes specific to their development if they wanted to. These are reviewed by staff and outside agencies and ultimately recommended by P&Z. But again, City Council is the final approval on these. And then our best example that you all are so familiar with is the Metro Verde South PUD concept plan. It differs from Sonoma Ranch in that it is its own zone, and also that as part of the project, they do have some deviations and have provided some public benefits that are outside the normal scope of development. PUD final site plans, just so that you all know what these are very similar and akin to what you would see in terms of a subdivision. We have a different name for them, but frankly, that's what they are. They're a subdivision. They act as a preliminary plat. You see these frequently. They are basically one phase among many in the PUD concept plan, and they have to be consistent with that concept plan. So we review it for consistency against the PUD. Again, those are reviewed by staff and outside agencies to make sure that they are consistent, and then we provide you recommendation. Ultimately, those are approved by P&Z. And not by City Council. The only time that is a little bit different is if it's submitted simultaneously with a concept plan. Then interestingly enough, that acts as a package that ultimately goes to city council. If they're separate submittals, then P&Z is the final decision body on that. An example of that is Metro Park Village. That was one that this particular board approved. Ultimately, what we're looking for when we look at these types of plans, master plans, PUDs, things of that nature, the first thing always is health, safety, and welfare. Of course, we also look to see if it is in keeping with the comprehensive plan, that being Elevate Las Cruces, and of course, whether it is consistent with other applicable plans. Some of the more important ones that we look at would be the Parks Master Plan, would be the Active Transportation Plan, and of course, any blueprints or any other neighborhood plans that may be out there. We also look for area impacts. So is it going to increase traffic beyond that that should be allowed on city roads? Or does it require some improvements? Is it going to create some density that would be unsustainable? Or noise that would really create problems for neighborhoods? And also we look at compatibility and a number of other things related to impacts of an area. Some of the other things that are maybe lesser known by this group, but we do look at it, is case law. That can be either federal case law or state case law in terms of the types of land use actions taking place. We also, of course, look at the citizen input where applicable. As you all know, people get very, very emotional about land use. And things going on next to them. People don't like change, oftentimes. And so we do listen to people, but oftentimes have to weed out kind of what is emotion and then truly what is a true impact that we must be concerned about. And I know that you all have become very adept at doing that in the last couple of years. We've had some very active neighborhoods that sometimes you've agreed with and at other times have not. And again, it's just a matter of weeding through that information. And then some of the other things that we look at are fiscal impacts in terms of how this might impact the city long-term, in terms of maintenance or whether or not it improves our tax base, things of that nature. So hopefully that was sort of a fast and furious overview of what we're looking at and those types of plans. And again, this was just skimming the surface. Of course, we have a lot of other functions and other development proposals and applications that you all, as a board and commission, review on a monthly basis. And I would be happy to be able to introduce some of those in a little bit more in depth at a later date. And we'll go ahead and turn this over to Robert with our legal department. Robert, did you need somebody to run the PowerPoint presentation for you, or will you be doing it yourself?
If you let me share the screen, I can do it.
You should be able to share the screen now. Stop sharing.
Okay. I'm Robert Cabello. I'm one of the attorneys here at the city, and I'm going to give a presentation on a few subjects: eminent domain, due process, RLUIPA, which is federal statutes regarding religious use of land and how we can regulate that, and fair housing. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes. Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Oh no, sorry. I had it on the right slide.
There we go.
So, eminent domain. So the term eminent domain comes from dominus eminent, which is supreme lordship. And it's obviously the concept that the government can take the land for a public use, and there has to be some sort of compensation for that. Let me just go over the history a little bit, because it actually is kind of a broader topic, but Thomas Jefferson, and I'm sure you know who he is. He was the person that drafted our Bill of Rights. And he was, of course, an anti-federalist. He wanted people to have in America allodial rights, which was on land. And allodial rights is sort of this sense of property that is the only way to describe it is, especially back then, if you went far enough west and you had the ability to defend your land and exclude it from others, and I guess west would be somewhere in Ohio at that time, and I guess you'd be able to defend it from the Shawnee or the Pawnee or Wyandotte or those people, you would have this land ownership without complete rights to the land, without having sort of any sort of dominion over you. There'd be no government be able to take it from you. Now, at least from a legal sense. The compromise with Madison was that we would have, instead of getting rid of all the feudal aspects of property ownership in America, we would keep some aspects of that, meaning that the sovereign could still take some of your land for a public purpose. Again, it would be, your rights were protected if you had, the government would have to pay for that public purpose. You couldn't just take your land and just use it and be left without it. And so the term fee simple, the term fee is actually harkens back to that feudal aspect of it, but fee simple, when you have it, means you have a right to enjoyment of the property for you and your heirs in perpetuity, meaning pretty much it's just yours. The government can come in with eminent domain. And so obviously there's some basic definitions. There's a Black's Law definition. They all mean the same. They can't, government entity has the ability to convert privately owned property, especially land, for public use for reasonable compensation for the taking. In a lot of property law actually turns on what is the definition of a taking. Obviously, if I just go and take your land, that's a taking. However, it gets a little bit more complicated when there's regulations that are not taking the land. Like, say if you own a timber farm and government says, state government or federal government says, you can't, whatever reason, you can't do timber farming anymore on your land. Well, they didn't take your land, but they essentially took the value of it. So at some point, there's an argument in case law, and it gets more complicated than that. What that's obviously, no Mexico Constitution, Article 2, Section 18, it kind of mirrors the exact language from the Fifth Amendment in our Constitution. Basically, your right to life, liberty, and property without due process law cannot be deprived of it. Private property shall not be taken or damaged for the public without just compensation. Those are called kind of the same things, and also implicate due process, which we'll talk about later. And then we'll talk about kind of the more interesting concepts here. So, City of Las Cruces under NMSA 31810 has the power of eminent domain, but if you read the definition there in the bottom paragraph, you're pretty much down to the rights of basically public access, utilities, very few things. And there's a reason for that. And I'll kind of go to why we lost the power of eminent domain for economic development. Going back to some poor cases. So there was a case in 1896 in the Supreme Court. It's Burlington Railroad Company versus Chicago. And that was the first time the Supreme Court said, because of the 14th Amendment, the power of eminent domain, essentially the rights, the protections of property of eminent domain, meaning the government could take your property, but they had to pay for it, was established. Essentially that no state could just take your land without compensating you. Great. So let's flash forward here, like much later, years later. There's a case called Berman v. Parker. It's a case based in Washington, D.C. Now, it's an interesting case. At that time in the 50s, I guess D.C. there's a lot of tenements that were essentially blight. There was abandoned buildings. D.C. wanted to take the land from the other property owner. They didn't have the resources to actually develop the land and do anything with it. And with another developer, and so they can make condominiums. And the Supreme Court actually sided with the city. They allowed them to do that because of economic development. It was a public purpose for it. But, the case gets more interesting as time goes on. In 2005, this is a big case. This is a really important case that will implicate lots of things. It's a Connecticut case, Kelo versus, I think it's the city of New London in Connecticut. And there you had a situation where the city of New London took land under eminent domain for economic development, but the land itself was not blighted. There was no safety hazard or public health hazard. It was just not being used to its maximum economic potential. And it benefited the city to raise revenues. And essentially the idea was it would go to a developer and it was going to be part of like some sort of a large campus for Pfizer, the pharmaceutical company. So they sided with the city. The Supreme Court actually sided with them. That got a lot of in the power of eminent domain for economic development. And you'll see here on this slide, my connection's a little off. On this slide, in 2007, the state of New Mexico eliminated the power of municipalities to use eminent domain for economic development. This is literally 2 years after that ruling. And to give you other ideas about that ruling, what ended up happening with that city, it was an economic disaster. It was essentially that Pfizer left 4 years later. The property was never developed again. It was somewhat of a disaster for property owner rights and actually for the city itself. And so also, and part of this, the city of Las Cruces, you can see this in 2008, about a year after that, limited its own authority to use eminent domain for economic development. It really wasn't necessary, but I think it was just as also saying the property owners throughout the city, we understand and respect your rights. Okay, due process, and this is a kind of honestly, I could go on for days about this, and I won't. There are two different parts of due process. There's your procedural due process, and that's obviously whatever action you're taking, or whether you're being deprived of property or your liberty, and the government wants something from you, you have a process for that. And obviously, this. Anybody that's watched any sort of procedural show about criminal law, like Law and Order, that, criminals have rights. And so if you're charged with a felony, the district attorney will either charge you through a secret proceeding called a grand jury. You get a notice saying, I've seen these, and when I was a DA, I used to read these, it says, greetings. You're being charged with so-and-so felonies. This is what the actual statutes are for the felonies. You can testify. You have the option to testify if you want. And then if not that, or they go through a preliminary hearing, which is like a mini trial, where they establish both processes establish, do you have probable cause to charge someone with a felony? So that's kind of like whatever's due for a person for a particular issue, whatever process has been set out by law, by case law, or by statute or regulation. That's the process you have. Now, there's another aspect of due process. It's called substantive due process. That means it doesn't matter what the process is. Even if the government follows the process, the question is the government justified in taking the action it does, whether it's taking your property, your life, or liberty, based on its justification? Essentially, is the government justified to do what it's doing? By law, and that's a whole separate set of sub-questions. But it's important to understand these concepts because sometimes property rights can fall into both. But as far as, and I put some definitions of this here as due process, of course, the legal requirement the government respects all rights that are owed to a person. And basically, if you're similarly situated, you have the same process as the person next to you. Doesn't matter what their race is. It doesn't matter what kind of wealth they have. Those things don't matter. A person is the same as any other person. And of course, as you know, we kind of went over this earlier. Both the New Mexico state Constitution and the U.S. Constitution both protect your due process rights. And in kind of an important case, and let me discuss this. What's so important about due process is it is a right, just like your right to free speech, or your right to be protection from unreasonable seizure, or even unreasonable force. And I'm sure, of course, you know that police officers can get sued under the Constitution for using excessive force. Well, if a government entity deprives a person of due process, you can also be sued. And there was a good case, and I can't remember now the name. It was either Matthew V. Eldridge or, no, not that. But name's not important. The point is that in this case, there were a bunch of, it was like in the 30s, and a bunch of college guys who were being really stupid essentially did a prank. And this prank was, and can everybody hear me right now? I'm getting an error message. Yes?
Yes, I can hear you.
Just making sure because I was getting an error message on my, So in this case, the college kids did a really stupid prank. It caused, essentially they took this original desk, they destroyed it, it was caught on fire, and they were immediately expelled. Because, destruction of this professor's property was obviously a violation of the code of conduct for the school. Now, the way they were kicked out of school was just by a letter. And even though it's obvious that they should have been kicked out, they were still deprived of the right of, they were supposed to have a hearing. And even though the hearing should have been a foregone conclusion, they were still deprived of it. And they were still allowed to sue for damages for not having the process itself. Even though all the evidence was pretty obvious. You had enough witnesses to know that, look, they did this prank. They caused this property damage. It's a violation of the code of conduct. The fact that it was a foregone conclusion did not, obviate the fact that you have to provide somebody due process. And so let's talk about how that really affects us in terms of planning and zoning. And here's a quote from the Battershell case. Essentially, the hearings we are going to have, the judicial hearings, the quasi-judicial hearings we will have, are essentially about certain decisions to make on property, on parcels of land. You'll have somebody, and you've seen this, people will come and protest a certain position. As part of that, the example of Battershell, what it represents is that if you're going to have testimony, the court realizes that an administrative hearing by planning and zoning, or like most administrative hearings, are not going to have all the same safeguards and procedures for, a criminal case where somebody is being convicted or being possibly going away forever. It doesn't have those same set of procedures. What it'll have is that it should have the basics. And one of the things is that if you're going to have testimony, that testimony should be under oath. That meaning that there should be the potential of a perjury charge if somebody does lie. And that a purpose, the witness, the party has a right to cross-examine the witness, meaning if the witness makes a testimonial statement, the opposing party has a right to ask follow-up questions regarding their statements, their beliefs, how did they come to these conclusions, how did they see certain things, and basically test the veracity and the possible bias that a witness might have. Now, again, the court recognizes that these hearings are not going to have the same procedural safeguards. You're not going to have, for example, in a civil case, and some of these last 7 days long in federal court, I have to make, there's a whole month-long process before that where I make motions of limine, where there are all these sets of motions where we argue even before the judge, can I raise a certain argument? Can I use a certain exhibit in front of the jury? You don't have to do those types of things. You don't have to have Daubert hearings, whether or not somebody is an expert to figure out that they have the ability to testify about a certain thing, or you don't have to testify or worry about and veneer a witness and ask them, hey, how do you know these particular facts? You don't have to do those types of things. You just have to get testimony. It has to be on oath. There has to be some sort of cross-examination just to have, the testimony have a certain level of credibility and reliability. The fact finder, and that's you, the body, the commission, has to be able to make a determination that these statements are not just some statements on a piece of paper, but that the person may or may not be telling the truth, or maybe not necessarily not lying or not telling the truth, but maybe they don't actually know or have reason to know the things that they're saying, or maybe they don't have enough information, or maybe that they do have too much bias about a particular issue. Okay, so Okay, this slide kind of shows the procedural process that there has for planning and zoning. Charter Article 6, and it says Section 6.01. It really is all of Article 6 is about planning and zoning. It establishes commission and its powers and its duty in general terms, not specifics. When you go to the Mexico State Statutes 319.1, they're right there. They establish the fact that the city of Las Cruces has the ability to establish a planning and zoning commission. This was even before these statutes existed, way before even our charter, or right to create our charter in the 90s did. And so under 38 LCMC, under our municipal code 3810B, those are the duties that the Planning and Zoning Commission has, and we don't have to go over in detail over them, but there they are on the next, going down on your left. And after a final issue or a decision by the P&Z board at the very bottom, it can be appealed to the city council. And I'm just going to go really briefly over this, but all those decisions, and again, the party that's doing the appeal can elect to have a battershell process, meaning, and there's been some sort of debate between the different city attorneys that have been here, at least when I was around, it was that from Fermin to Pete Connolly to Rusty Babington and Jennifer Vega Brown, there was always like as far as what was the appeal process. You can have a battershell process where you literally take testimony. You have a de novo review, meaning the testimony is done again. And they make determinations based on this. As long as the same witness are testifying, you can make a decision. Or you can do a sort of record review process. And at least that's what Pete Connolly was saying, is that you could do a record review process, meaning you just took the transcripts, any exhibits, you reviewed that and based your decision without testimony, without just reading what's on the transcripts and on exhibits, and then make a decision. As far as if there is a sort of an appeal of that decision of the city council, there is under the district court rules, there is a rule NMRA 1074 that allows you to just take your decision. It's not a lawsuit. You're taking a decision, you're appealing it into district court and having a district judge make a decision. And the decision they'll be making is, did the city have a reasonable purpose, government purpose to making the decision, and was the decision was it reasonable and not capricious or arbitrary? And that's what the purpose of having these comprehensive guides, these master plans. If you're basing your decision on that's one of the things you can use to defend, or I can use to defend the city's position. Okay, RLUIPA. Okay. And you can read that. The Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act. And let me preface this before I start talking about in detail about this. Let me take you back to 1994. 1994, Newt Gingrich and the Republicans took Congress, and as part of his contract with America, one of the things that he was championing was sort of, and it was a law, it was the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And it was very encompassing. It sort of told, it gave instructions to state governments and local governments. It actively told them there were certain things that they had to do to protect people's religious freedoms. And you had this important lawsuit come out of that in 2005 from the Supreme Court. It was called the City of Burney v. Flores. Now, Flores was a Catholic bishop in the city of Burney, and Burney is like a little bit west of, it's kind of like, it reminds me of Ruidoso. It's kind of a little bit west of Austin. It's kind of a quiet town. This bishop had this church that was, I think, built by German immigrants at the turn of the century. And since it was a very small church, he wanted to do a bunch of expansions to that church for current worshipers. The city of Burney said they couldn't be done because any sort of expansion would be a violation of their historic district. It was a historic church, and it was. and there was a process for that, and it certainly went through that process, and it definitely was, and the expansions would violate any of the historic district code and their building code for that historic building. The bishop brought suit, and then it went, of course, to the Supreme Court under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and he basically said, he brought it as a cause of action, said that the city of Boerne is hindering his ability to practice his religion and to be a priest and to have other parishioners come to his church by having this historic district regulation. And of course, the city of Boerne said, well, hey, this historic district regulation has nothing to do with Catholics or church or religious people or not. It's just it's an historic building that happens to be a church. The Supreme Court shot down the Religious Restoration Freedom Act, and it basically said that the Congress didn't have that ability to tell states, and it didn't have the ability to tell states and local governments that you could just regulate. You could regulate in this way, causing sort of causes of action and creating these sort of affirmative rights to like people within states and cities regarding religion. So they took another different act and they came up with RLUIPA. And one of the things that RLUIPA does, and we'll go over that really quick. RLUIPA, no government shall impose and implement a land use in a manner that imposes substantial burden on the exercise of a person, including a religious assembly, as a furtherance of short of a compelling interest, and it has to be the least restrictive means furthering that compelling government interest. And so what it does with RLUIPA was it provided, if you were going to get federal funds, and we'll go over this, it goes to people that are incarcerated. So if it applied to people essentially that were in prison, so if your state gets money for prisons, federal money, you basically have to follow these rules. And that causes a number of other different issues that we're really not here for today. But the other substack, if kind of under the Commerce Clause, if there's a substantial burden that you put some sort of regulation on a church, and there's a substantial burden, and it is the practice of commerce with another nation, then it also is implicated with this. But also, and number C, which is the easiest part, I think, is kind of dealing with planning and zoning. If you're making a planning and zoning and has an effect on a religious institution, you could be having there could be a cause of action under RLUIPA. And so let me talk about the cases that are kind of under RLUIPA. And so there's not a whole lot of like case law saying, particularly under RLUIPA regarding, and there's, I think there was another 2008 case, Cutter v. Wilkinson. In that case, they upheld RLUIPA regarding prisoners. But there hasn't been a whole lot as far as going to the federal courts regarding what can actually be done regarding what are the actual like case law precedents that we can follow. But we know this from like the Second Circuit. So there was Sunrise Detox v. the City of White Plains. And in that, the city there was saying, okay, it was a religious institution had a sort of detox center. It was sort of as part of its, religious establishment beliefs. They had this sort of, rehab center where they were using religion and they were getting people to sort of, obviously rehabilitate people from their drug use. And the city said, you can't do that, church, because if you're going to do some sort of rehab, you have to be zoned for that. Well, the Second Circuit said that you actually, they came down in favor of the church and said, you have to actually let them do this because it is having a substantial impact. This, even though it's a standard zoning regulation, it has a substantial impact on the practice of the religion. And the practice of that church was that they wanted to do rehab for people. And so you can see there's a number of decisions, like there was another one in Hackensack, New Jersey, where, it was an Orthodox synagogue, and there was issues about, they wanted to do an expansion. To do an expansion, they had to add additional parking, A lot of the neighbors complained when they went to the Planning and Zoning Commission there, said, it's just going to cause a burden of all this parking issues and stuff in the area, because I guess there's not a lot of parking in that area. It's a very urban area. And, the church said, the synagogue said, look, we, since we're Orthodox, we have to walk to our service. And they ended up losing at that level, at the city level. But of course, it goes to the, I think it was the third circuit? No, fourth circuit. Anyhow, the point is, they went to the federal court and they basically said, look, even though this is a generally applicable sort of, guidelines regarding parking and setbacks and all those things are very general and applies to everybody. And even though it's just a synagogue, it's still having a substantial effect on the practice of that religion, and you can't do it. So I don't have a whole lots of guidance as to what can and can't be done. It has to be made, evaluations have to be made individually, but on a case-by-case basis. Okay, fair housing. So fair housing, and when you're talking about fair housing, you're talking about Title VIII and under the Civil Rights Act of 1968. And I think there's some basic stuff. There it is, this Fair Housing Act. It protects people from discrimination, whether they're buying or renting a home or applying for or seeking housing assistance or engaging in sort of other housing activities. And so it obviously protects people from race, color, national origin, religion, sex, family status, and disability. And let me go over this in more detail because I think there's something's missing from this slide. But so in 68, obviously protected against race, color, national origin, and religion. And that was in 68. In 74, on the basis of sex. So you couldn't discriminate against people, based on their gender. In 1988, the family status, people with children could not be discriminated against in regarding to housing. And then, of course, later on, flash forward, and under the Obama administration, under 2012, HUD made some regulations saying that on the basis of sex, which originally was established for gender, you couldn't discriminate against the LGBT community. And in 2020, and I forget what month it was, the Supreme Court made a decision saying sex included, on the basis of sex, included LGBT or sort of sexual orientation and gender identity. And then about 2 weeks ago, actually, the Biden administration, I think 2 weeks or 1 week ago, it was this month, the Biden administration passed regulations that actually establish those things that are both gender identity and orientation in HUD regulations. And so essentially those are the statuses that are protected from discrimination. So under that, you certainly can't refuse to sell a dwelling to any person based on those protected classes or statuses. As far as discrimination, you can't discrimination on regarding any of the people regarding terms or privileges about the dwelling. So like if you have a condo and there's certain like amenities, you can't say that certain people can't use the pool or the gym or whatever. Again, it bars sort of, discriminatory advertising saying, I only want to rent to these people or not those people. And, this thing as far as neglecting, you can't do things like you sort of neglect maintenance or repairs of the unit or make things unlivable for a person just based on those types of statuses. Okay, so, one of the things with those things, I mean, obviously people have a right of action and there's a lawsuit to that, but, there are certain things that the government can do, like as far as one of the things that's prohibited is sort of like, obviously, there's a case called Albuquerque Commons, which prevents spot zoning. Spot zoning is like when you have a zone, an area that's zoned for something, and then you have one parcel of land that's zoned differently, and that has different conditions, sort of it's zoned differently for a particular person. Well, those types of practices, and a subset of that, it's called contract zoning, where you get you give somebody a favorable decision. It's sort of like spot zoning. out of a zone, you get their parcel and you give them a favorable zoning. If they stick to the point that they can't use their land for very particular purposes, even though everybody else in the zone doesn't have the same restrictions. And those things are actually kind of conditions that sometimes city governments have used to do things like redlining or purposefully making sure that certain people are not allowed in certain areas. It doesn't say like a certain minority can't do something there or buy a house there, but if you make restrictions, making it hard to have multi-family unit housing or low-income housing or affordable housing, that would often has a disparate impact on people that are essentially a minority status people. And what could happen is that if there's a finding of that, then of course they could be subject to a lawsuit. So there are certain practices that of course are prohibited that you can't do. So obviously, and then this kind of goes to the same thing. Obviously, we can never use land use or zoning practice to result in unjustified discrimination that has caused or particularly caused a disparate impact on people. And so kind of the thing, and you've heard this before, I know that certainly the commission has done a great job of, like Catherine said, responding to concerns from the neighborhood. But sometimes you do hear people say things like, well, they don't want multifamily housing units, and because it'll cause crime, and I've even heard somebody say once, I don't want those people there, or something like here in the neighborhood. And it obviously was talking about they thought they were getting this. They're trying to create this image that there would be this crime would just pop up out of multifamily housing units. So that is, one of the things to look out for when you're making your decisions is that, some of these things can have a disparate impact on people. And so we should obviously, we can't stop them from saying certain things, but we should temper the commission should temper, the views it sees and understands the position that you can't necessarily listen to all those statements because one, it gets close to a discriminatory practice and violating the Fair Housing Act. And I guess then I'll open it to discussions. I'm sorry, I should probably send it to, how do I stop sharing? Okay. So at this point, I'll open it up to my section or Catherine or somebody else so they can have a discussion. Questions? Uh-oh. I think I did something wrong.
Chairperson Thomas?
Okay, okay.
Chairperson Thomas, are you still there?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah. I don't see any hands up. Anybody have any discussion, questions, or? I would like, Robert, would you go over the Albuquerque Commons thing again? Because that was a big deal for a while. What happened there?
Sorry. There were 3 sets of cases for that. And one of them was about, I'm trying to remember the case law off the top of my head. Well, let me go over one. One was to do with spot. Well, the reason I brought it up was about spot zoning. We just shouldn't do spot zoning, meaning if an area is zoned, there's a zone for an area, whole region. And in that zone, you have one parcel of land that just has one different zone for it. That's called spot zoning, and it's really prohibited. We can't do that. I mean, this can't be done. We can change the zone for the whole area, or maybe change zone, but you can't just do a parcel of land. As far as the other issues with Albuquerque Commons, another thing, we really never brought it up in the context of my presentation, but there was a case where it kind of blurred the lines. It kind of made you think about what is quasi-judicial and what is sort of a legislative. Usually legislative decisions that the commission will make are things like comprehensive plans, master plans, whereas a judicial is usually about, somebody with a parcel of land or a couple parcels of land, they want to do some sort of change. So with Albuquerque Commons case, one of the cases was that there was a section in Albuquerque, but they was doing a master plan. I think it was that area where they have that outdoor mall.
Mhm.
I could be wrong about that. Okay. But I think it was the outdoor mall, or the area that would become the outdoor mall. It was a huge chunk of land, and they rezoned it or as part of some sort of master plan. But the problem was that really that area, even though it's a large chunk of land, it was really just one landowner. You were making one landowner, you were making a decision, and it really should have been given, even though it was like, again, a broad range plan. A judicial process, a quasi-judicial process. And again, that goes to your batter shell and other things like that.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, Trizana, do you want to give us sort of a wrap up of what you hope we're taking away from this?
Sure, Madam Chair, this is Trijana Busnett for the record. Yeah, so I think this was a good introductory training for the Planning and Zoning Commission. We would love to hear back if you have feedback, if you'd like to have another training on specific issues or questions that you all may have, you can just, send us an email or let us know right now. So I don't really have a lot to add other than that, and we just thank you for your time.
Thank you for the information. I'm a little overwhelmed at the moment, but I took notes and I'll look at it again and try to digest it more. I think one of the things that one problem I've had often with PUDs is I don't really see, lots of times developers do PUDs and they don't really give that much in the way of, public facilities in return for getting the PUD. So I don't know. Is there anything in the PUDs that says a list of the kinds of things they have to do, or is that just get negotiated individually? Case by case.
Catherine, do you want
This is Catherine Harrison with Community Development. Chair Thomas, members of the commission. It really is negotiated. Staff tries to negotiate those items as part of the review process. Sometimes we have to provide some guidance or even make some suggestions. It is something that I would like to see maybe made, if we're going to keep the PUD process during the code rewrite, it's something that I would like to be made a little bit more robust to ensure that there are triggers, there are timelines, things of that nature, because we have seen issues with some of our existing PUDs saying a lot of nice things that they're going to do X, Y, and Z, but then they never do it, and there's no mechanism by which to force them to do it. And so it's definitely something that we would like to at least make more robust or a little bit more clear moving forward.
That would be good. Yeah, I'd like to, as we go forward with rewriting the codes, that would be an area I'd be interested in seeing what they do with that. So I know that, yeah, go ahead. Oh,
I have a question for this Commissioner Gordon, for Catherine. I was under the impression that if a developer or someone's developing a piece of property that borders on a road that has a median, is it not the fact that they are required to landscape their side of the median, or is that their option?
Commissioner Gordon, members of the commission, so we do have language in our code that requires that they are responsible for landscaping their half of the median. However, they can negotiate that and pay a fee in lieu of doing that to the city. And so that is an option for them. They can do a fee in lieu, they can landscape it, or in instances where it's a state highway, the city can't force them to do it unless the DOT allows it, and sometimes that can be an issue.
Well, what happens, for example, let's take Sonoma Ranch Boulevard, for example, the northern part of it now, where they're building all that development on both sides of Sonoma Ranch, up by the state police headquarters. I think you're familiar with it. there's medians all the way up Sonoma Ranch Boulevard, and they're developing both sides of that road. And I remember when they came before us, I asked a question about landscaping. It was not in their proposal to install landscaping, and I didn't remember anything, excuse me, about being said that they negotiated the fact that they didn't have to do it. Is that true?
Mr. Gordon, members of the commission, I'm unaware of any sort of special exemption regarding that. I do want to state that's something that we can look into. But generally, when a commercial business, not the subdivider, but when a commercial business develops along adjacent to those types of rights of way, they're the ones responsible for landscaping that.
So that means that Loman is a dead issue as far as landscaping is concerned, unless the city does it.
Commissioner Gordon, members of the commission, in some areas, yes, it will be the responsibility of the city. Some of those areas were developed before that provision was put into place. And in other instances, some of those individuals or individual property owners did pay a fee in lieu.
The reason that I bring this up is I've been approached by someone who lives here who asked me the question, if I remember correctly, they're going to spend $25 million to go ahead and do the entranceway off of 25 up on University. Isn't there a pot of money that the city can go to perhaps, the reason they're doing, part of the reason that they're doing University is to beautify the entrance into the city coming off of 25. Now, if you come off of 25 up on Loman and you go up Loman and you look at that barren median there, it's ugly. And people ask me, why isn't that being done? And is there not a pot of money that somebody could go the city council and ask them perhaps maybe in some way or form to landscape that or do something with it?
Commissioner Gordon, members.
I know this is a little off the question about training, but it sort of brings up the fact of what requirements are when it comes to doing perhaps a PUD.
Commissioner Gordon, members of the commission, now these are all very good questions. So there's some areas that are adjacent to the interstate, for example, and I forget the distancing, but it's a significant distance where those rights of way are actually controlled by the DOT, surprisingly far from the interstate. And so at some instances, the city has zero authority in terms of landscaping. In other areas along Loman, yes, there are some monies perhaps that could go towards that. Those are some things that would have to be budgeted into the CIP and would either come from the general fund or special funds that maybe Parks and Rec had access to. But those are all things we can find some additional information out for you. And if you have a very specific location along Loman, I'd be happy to look into it for you and have the appropriate staff respond.
Okay, thanks.
Were you talking, Commissioner Gordon, you were talking about Sonoma Ranch, right? Not Loman?
No, but that was initially when I talked about that there is development going on there now. If you go up Sonoma Ranch Boulevard, going north, or just along where just past the state police headquarters that was built there, they're doing development on both sides of the road, and some of it is commercial. And we voted on this about a year or so ago, I think. And I don't remember them making any commitment about doing and I brought it up at the commission meeting that night about the question of doing landscaping, and I never did get a good answer. And then that just prompted me to say also about Loman, where there is no chance now for anybody to contribute landscaping because there is development already done on both sides of the road all the way up to Roadrunner.
Yeah, that's been a problem in the past too. There was a further on South Sonoma Ranch, there was a big area that didn't get, that nothing got done in the median. So yeah, it would be good if we could have more discussion about that, maybe at another meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else have a comment or question? Okay, I guess we'll go on to item number 10, which is commission commentary. Anybody have anything they would like to speak about at this point? Seeing none, well, how about staff announcements? Are there any staff announcements?
Madam Chair, this is David Weir. We don't have anything to report this evening, but if there's any questions that you had of staff or any pending cases, we'd be happy to respond.
David, this is Commissioner Gordon. Have they actually started on working on revamping the zoning codes, that outside consultant?
Madam Chair and Commissioner Gordon, this past, was it just Monday, Catherine, or last week, the council approved the contract with Freeze Nichols to start that project. And later, or sometime next week, we're going to have our initial background information meeting with the consultants. And once the contract is signed and executed, we will go forward and schedule the initial activities for that project. So the short answer I should have given you first is yes, we are approved to start that project.
And I would assume that, like, working on Elevate Las Cruces, we will have all the parties that basically were involved in that, I would think, that pertain basically only to zoning, will participate in the development of the changes.
Madam Chair and Commissioner Gordon, it's a bigger project than just the zoning code. We're going to review the zoning code, the subdivision code, the public infrastructure design standards, and create a new zoning atlas for the city, and also have a, for lack of a better term, a user's guide to help implement the plan. So it's a rather large project. Now, one of the difference between Elevate Las Cruces and the ordinances, that the ordinances are more technical in nature. They are, their laws, their engineering standards, and their, processes that go forward. So the review will be a little bit different, but you as the Planning and Zoning Commission who have to make a recommendation on all those will be intricately involved. And I would anticipate providing periodic updates to you. And I would also assume that the consultants will interview you and ask about what type of issues or concerns you have dealing with development cases on a monthly basis. But one of the first steps they're going to do is go forward with that engagement process and outline how they are going to receive input from all the stakeholders involved with the process.
This is going to take forever.
Yes, that's been quite a discussion in terms of the the El Paseo and South Solano and the things that people want to do in those neighborhoods, and will that actually end up being in the updating of the codes? So we're going to have an interesting couple of years going forward.
Staff would agree.
Yeah, right. Never stops, all this work. Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for participating, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion. This is Commissioner Gordon. I make a motion, we adjourn.
Is there a second?
This is Commissioner Bennett, and I'll second that.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay.
Aye.
We're adjourned, and it's 8, I don't know, what does this say up here? 13.
8:13.
8:13 p.m. Thank you. Have a good rest of the meeting, of the evening.
Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone, and good evening, and be safe.
Thank you.